I think the other thing that like helped, and I'm very thankful for, is this was, you know, before social media, before fucking Instagram, Facebook, and all this shit. So it was one of those things where it's just like you could just suck for years and like nobody fucking saw it, and there was no pressure, and it was just like whatever, you just put out shit, and there was no like it just was whatever the fuck you wanted to do, and like it just didn't have the like weight that I feel like young artists feel now, to like everybody's gonna see this, and it's like, you know, it's just different. So I'm kind of thankful that I was able to start when you know, before all this noise.
So I'm just to jump ahead a bit, I'm kind of curious about that too. Like now that, especially now that you have such a massive audience looking at your stuff, like do you ever feel that kind of pressure of, you know, hey, I got to get this out, or this isn't good enough, you know, for everyone who's going to be jumping on here and looking at all my stuff? Like there's a set level of expectation that all eyes are going to be on my work?
Yes and no. I do understand that everybody, or not everybody, but some people will see this. I understand that, you know, a number of people will see what I put out. So I feel like that, you know, is kind of good in a way. It's good and bad. I think it's good because it, like, you know, it makes you want to try harder, because you're like, okay, people are going to fucking see this. Mm-hmm. So that's where I think it's really good. And that's where I think if you're doing an everydays, like releasing it publicly, I think will make you try harder, because you don't want to just put out a pile of shit. So it's very motivating. And I know, like, when it's like a couple days in a row, or it's like, I kind of phoned it in the last few days, I got to fucking really try here. This is fucking like, this sucks. And I start just kind of feeling like, nah, this is freaking garbage. And so it's good in terms of that. I don't really feel like it's ever been that sort of like pressure is good. I don't really feel like there's ever that much pressure on me though, because I've never like had this like big thing happen to me where it's like, oh my God, I just got like a bazillion fans. Like it's been a pretty slow progression over time. So there's never been like this huge sort of like leap of like, oh my God, everybody's looking at me now, which I feel like would probably be extremely like paralyzing for a lot of artists. If suddenly like there's a huge amount of like the eye of fucking Sauron is, you know, pointed at you. And the other thing I look at and I think about, and that's where another sort of like advantage to the everydays is, the picture that I put out tomorrow will be one almost 5,000th of this project. I look at the everydays as like one project. And so each picture I'm putting up is less and kind of matters less and less and less and less and less and less as I put out more pictures. So, you know, each one is just a tiny piece of this bigger thing that I'm doing. So that also kind of like, it allows me to sort of like take the pressure off, and it's like, it is what it is. And the other thing is, I know I spent like 2 hours on this, and I have a pretty realistic expectation for like, you know, what can be accomplished in 2 hours. And it's not going to be a fucking masterpiece. It's 2 fucking hours. Like, what the fuck are you talking? It's a sketch. To me, the everydays are sketches. They're fucking sloppy. There's tons of fucking, you know, this or that. Anything you make in 2 hours, that's not like gonna be like a fucking, you know, I don't know, it is what it is for 2 hours. So that's another thing where I kind of like, you know, take it down a notch.
That's awesome. I got a buddy of mine, Justin Leduc. He created that Red Grim Reaper.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, I met him in Toronto briefly.
Yeah, really nice guy. I guess like for me, it was kind of interesting seeing, like I started watching his work and noticing he's posting, I think, on average every 3 days. And that was just something that I didn't realize, like, you know, every post he did was with the intent to go viral. And like, I didn't realize he kind of was putting that pressure on himself that, you know, every post has to be the one that's going to blow up. And the thing is that it kind of sucks to look at it now that he finally got that. He got that post that everybody would see. And he's posted 5 pictures in the last 2 years because of that. And I only bring that up because I feel like it is exactly what you're talking about, where you suddenly get this instant result, and then this invisible pressure is on you that, you know, every piece is going, if I post a bad piece, I'm going to lose 20,000 followers or whatever. So you kind of paralyze yourself.
And to be honest, I've seen that a number of times over the years, that people, like, you know, something blows up and then they put out another thing, and almost invariably it doesn't do as well, just because it's sort of like there's so much kind of just lightning in a bottle with this shit, where it's just kind of like, you know, who the fuck knows, the right time, the right day, the right, you know, maybe it was the right person just fucking reblogged it or some shit. And you know, then it blew up. So it's so random. So I feel like that's the other thing, where every day's kind of remove that option to be like, well, you know, this has to go viral and I'm not going to release it till I think it's going to go viral. It's like, no, you got to fucking do it every day. And
that's right.
A question I get a lot is, do I like bank these up? It's like, no, each one is done start to finish that day and posted somewhere before midnight. And so there's no like, well, I'm going to, you know, piddle with it for a few more days until it's like perfect. It's like, no, it has to be done. So I feel like that's another thing that kind of like a little sort of mechanism that doesn't allow what you're talking about to kind of like happen to me. What's
your opinion on that? Like on the whole starving artist thing, do you think that having social media and having a platform these days, it's obviously going to be, I wouldn't say easier to accumulate an audience, but you've got the opportunity to be able to do it compared to before internet and everything else, where you're not really going to be a global name. It doesn't really exist. So do you think that for artists out there, having social media becomes a really powerful weapon to be able to leverage?
I think it does, and it doesn't. I think it's definitely a powerful weapon, but it's like a weapon that everybody has. So it's kind of like cancels out in a way. So it's sort of like everybody brought a gun to the gunfight. So it's kind of like, well, that's, everybody's got a gun. I mean, I can shoot my gun, but that guy's got a gun too. So, and I think there's also a lot of like, you know, you need to look at it as a tool. And you need to look at it as something where it's like, what am I getting out of this and what is it costing me? Because one of the things that can very much cost you is just, it fucks with your head. Like, that's the whole fucking thing of it. And it fucks with my head too. So, you know, I'm very sort of like careful to not let it, you know, try and as best as I can mitigate the like negative aspects of social media, which everybody knows. So, you know, I think it can be powerful, and I think it's made things, definitely there's far less gatekeepers, because again, yeah, like you're talking about 30 years ago, it's like, well, if you're not, you know, kissing fucking JD Rockefeller's ass or whoever, and he buys your painting for $2 million, then nobody's gonna fucking know you. Like, how the fuck are you gonna do it other than that? It's there was fewer people. Like I look at before, like Instagram in particular, how many artists I was following and how many artists I could just name. Just like, no, you know, name some artists you like. I could probably name 10 maybe. And it's like, now I could name like fucking 300. So it's like, I feel like it's accelerated a lot of things and allowed you to like follow way more people, and it's got tons and tons of benefits, but there's also some extremely significant sort of like negative aspects to it that I think you need to be very cognizant of and very sort of like vigilant to kind of like guard against.
How do you handle that? Like for you, what's your mindset around the negative aspects?
So my mindset around the negative aspects is, one, I rarely read comments, especially with like the Trump shit that I do, you know, Trump fucking pissing and whatever, this or that. Like, I know there's going to be a million comments of, oh, go fuck yourself, you whatever. So that's not even, you can type whatever the fuck you want. I said my piece with this picture. You can take your little comments, whatever you want. And so I'm just not going to see it. So that's a big one. And I also really try hard to not look at how many likes each picture gets each day. I post it and like get out of the app. get out of that part of the app. Like, I'm definitely looking at people's things, and I look at people's like DMs, because a lot of people at times with the like DMs from the stories, like they're more funny or interesting, and it's less, and it's a little bit more, I don't know. It's just, there's less shittiness too. And sometimes there's like weird, funny things or this or that. So that I'll see, somewhat, but I think sort of like limiting how much you're being very conscious of the feedback that you're looking at. Because when you post a picture and you just read all the comments, it's 100% unfiltered feedback. And so, it all looks the same. So you see something that could be like, okay, here's this, like, I post a picture and there's 30 comments. And first off, you immediately focus on all the negative comments first. It could be fucking 29 comments of this is fucking amazing, and one comment of
the ratio is off.
Garbage. You immediately go to that person's thing and it's like, who the fuck is this motherfucker? Fucking said this. You don't give a shit about the other 29. You don't give zero fucks. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you saw the person that was actually posting that comment, this is fucking stupid, this sucks, and you knew them, and you knew their education level and like what they also like, you would probably be like, okay, yeah, I don't give a shit. Like, but you don't know those things. So you don't know that it's like, their favorite whatever is something that you find totally stupid, or it's just some 13-year-old kid, or, XYZ, or somebody who knows nothing about art. It's like, why would I listen to this person's like feedback? But there's no way to like know that. So you just kind of like accept their feedback as like valid, when it's like, that's not valid feedback. That's just like fucking noise. It's like somebody shouting at you at a truck, you suck. Like, what, you gonna listen to that person? Wait a second, I suck. No, it's just some jackass fucking just posting, negative shit because they had a fucking shitty day on the internet.
And that's the funny thing too. You're right. I'll just cut in and say, like, that's the funny thing is, anytime that you actually do challenge those people, like, reply nicely and say, sorry, you're having a bad day or something. They're like, yeah, I am. And it's just so funny. Like, most people, I've started to realize, like, they don't ever expect anyone to read what they're saying. And if you ever look at their profiles, like, they're trolling everything because they are having a shitty day, and that's just their way of bringing everyone else down with them. And it is funny though, like, you could get, like Ash Thorpe, Boss Logic, bunch of people like commenting your stuff, like, great work. And you see one person who you don't know, and it's not, I don't think about that you don't know them and they're probably really low on the spectrum. I think it's just someone says something negative and it cuts through, the ratio is totally off. Like, all these other people are saying nice stuff, and like that one thing is enough to be like, it'll stick with you for days. And it's so funny that we're kind of built that way.
And so that's where it's like, I think trying to just not see that shit, I think is good too. And to be honest, the positive comments too can be helpful in a way, but they can also be like, especially once you have some level of sort of like following or this or that, like, I know when I fucking phoned it in. So me reading a million comments, this is fucking amazing, people. It's like, okay, this was not, I'm very glad you like it, but I know it's not amazing. So I feel like that's also not healthy, like reading like fucking a bunch of people fucking jerking you off when you didn't really try very hard on that. Like, I think that is not healthy either. So I feel like in general, like, feedback is good, but I feel like it's, being very mindful of who you're sort of like receiving feedback for, because you're kind of, monkey lizard brain sort of like treats it all the same and sort of, gives just as much credence to, J-Chick 69, whatever, 420 as it does to, Ash Thorpe or frickin', whatever.
I think you nailed it. Like, because I think you're absolutely right. Like, two aspects of this is, I've already forgotten the second one, but like, I think that positive and negative feedback you shouldn't really take to heart. I think it's good to be appreciative of that, and at the same time though, like, I don't think it's very healthy if you're taking everyone's comments like, yeah, I am the best, because it's just going to build up
to
this
make
kind
you
of
complacent. It's going to make you complacent. It's going to make you think anything you put out is just automatically good. If you're constantly just like, it just, you know, I don't know. It's just not that helpful in many, many respects.
I think when you're doing stuff for social, and that's why I like the fact that you're doing it for you. You're not doing it like, oh, I've got to get it out there for everyone else, because it's very easy to get caught up on that. And that's why I brought up Justin.
That's the thing. It's one of those things. We're all humans. I want people to like it, and I want people to see it. And I'm not like, you know, I'm not like this fucking monk living on a fucking mountain, you know, taking art and blowing it off and oh, it's gone, whatever. You know, I want people to see it and I want people to like it. But I think just being cognizant of the fact that you are a human, we're all humans, and we're wired to like, you know, certain aspects. And that's where fucking, you know, social media can be super, super negative, is it plays on those things. It's sort of like, you know, they know what people like and what's going to keep them engaged in this and that. So I feel like just being very mindful of the sort of mind fucks that these things can present, it will sort of like help you be able to use it and get the most out of it, you know, without getting pissed at the tool or the people or this or that.